As we continue this journey, you may notice something subtle beginning to shift. Not in the stories, but in you. Perhaps your thoughts move a little slower now. Perhaps you've begun listening differently, not just with the mind, but with something deeper, quieter. The next stories are not louder. They don't try harder to teach. If anything, they ask even less of you. They invite you to stop waiting for a grand moment of wisdom and begin noticing the wisdom already in front of you. In ordinary things, in misunderstandings, in mistakes, in silence, in timing, in contradiction. What if the truth isn't hidden? What if it's been here the whole time, just waiting for you to pause long enough to see it? The Buddha said, with our thoughts, we make the world. But sometimes, when the thoughts quiet down, the world begins to make sense on its own. So take a breath, feel the ground beneath you, and allow the next stories to unfold like the sky, without rush, without reason, just presence. We begin again, right here. The Laughing Man and the King. True joy within cannot be taken away by anyone. In a faraway kingdom known for its grandeur and wealth, there lived a king who had everything: gold, servants, palaces, and power. And yet, he was not happy. Each day he woke restless, troubled by fears he could not name. Fear of aging, of losing power, of death. One morning, while walking through the city disguised as a traveler, the king heard something unusual: laughter. Not the laughter of mockery or drunkenness, but something bright and full, like a bell ringing through open space. He followed the sound to a small courtyard, where an old man sat beneath a tree, laughing softly to himself, eyes shining with joy. The king approached, curious. "What makes you laugh like that?" he asked. "You have no wealth, no palace, no guards. What is so amusing?" The old man looked at him and smiled. "Everything," he said, "and nothing." He plucked a leaf from the ground. "This," he said, "is enough." The king furrowed his brow. "You mean to tell me that a leaf makes you happy?" The man nodded. "And the wind, and the sun, and even this moment, speaking with a stranger who forgets he's a king." The king's eyes widened. "How did you know?" The old man laughed again, gently. "Because only someone who has everything can be so unsure of what it all means." The Buddha said, "Health is the greatest gift, contentment, the greatest wealth, and presence, the greatest joy. We search for joy in what we can acquire, but joy is never owned, only noticed. It appears not when the world gives us more, but when we finally see what was always here." The king returned to his palace that day, but something had changed. The throne no longer felt quite so important, and in the quiet of his chambers, he too began to laugh. The Master Archer. Total presence in action leads to perfect unity. In ancient China, there lived a man known across the land for his extraordinary skill with a bow. They called him the Master Archer. He never missed. People traveled far to witness his arrows in flight. Smooth, precise, effortless. He was celebrated in courts and villages alike. But few understood his secret. One day, a younger archer came to him. He had trained for years, perfected his stance, studied every technique. Yet something was missing. "Master," he said, "I want to know what makes your arrows always find their mark. Is it a technique I haven't learned? A hidden form?" The master nodded toward the mountains. "Meet me at sunrise," he said. on the cliff's edge. The next morning, the young archer arrived. The air was still. The valley below lay shrouded in mist. "Stand here," the master said, guiding him to the edge. "Now shoot." The young man looked down. The drop was steep, dizzying. His legs trembled. He raised his bow, but his hands shook. He stepped back. "I can't," he admitted. "I'm afraid I'll fall." The master smiled. "That is the difference between us. When I shoot," he said, "there is no fear, no me trying to succeed, no thoughts of winning or losing. There is only the arrow, the bow, and the target as one. You miss not because you lack technique, but because you are divided inside. Zen calls this mushin, no mind, a state where action flows naturally without the interference of ego. Not careless, but clear. The Buddha said, "Your work is to discover your world, and then, with all your heart, give yourself to it. In stillness, in full presence, without fear. That is the true mark of mastery." And from that cliff, the young archer finally understood. He had been aiming with his hands, but not yet with his whole being. The Zen Master and the Heavy Stone. Sometimes you don't need to remove the obstacle, just walk around it with wisdom. In a small mountain village, the main road was blocked by a large stone. It had fallen from the cliffs above during a storm, and no one had been able to move it. Strong men tried to push it. Nothing. Others brought hammers and tools, but the stone was too solid, too deeply embedded in the earth. They tried digging around it, but the ground was hard, and the stone refused to yield. The road remained blocked. Carts turned back. Travelers grew impatient, and frustration spread like wildfire through the village. Finally, someone said, "Let's ask the Zen master." The old monk came down from his hermitage in the hills, walking slowly, cane in hand. He circled the stone, examining it from every side. The villagers watched in silence, waiting for wisdom. After a long pause, the master spoke. "Why must the stone be moved?" he asked. The people stared, confused. "Because it's in the way," one said. "It's blocking the road." The master nodded. "Yes, it blocks one path, but perhaps it reveals another." He pointed beyond the road, to a clear space beside the stone. "Let's build a new path," he said. The villagers blinked, not in disagreement, but in sudden understanding. Together, they cleared a new way around the boulder. It was easier than they thought, faster than expected. And soon, the village had not just a road, but a story. Children played near the stone. Travelers rested in its shade. And what was once a problem became a place of meeting, reflection, and pause. The Buddha said, "As the fletcher straightens an arrow, so the wise shape their thoughts." Not all obstacles must be removed. Some can be honored, walked around, or seen from a new angle. Sometimes, the path isn't blocked. It's simply asking to be redrawn. The empty cup. A full mind cannot receive. Let go of what you think you know. A renowned professor once traveled a great distance to visit a Zen master. He had studied many religions, written books, delivered lectures, and was widely respected for his knowledge. But he had never experienced Zen. When he arrived at the simple hut, the master greeted him with a bow and invited him in for tea. The professor began talking immediately. He spoke of ancient texts, compared Zen to other schools of thought, quoted philosophers and scriptures with ease. The master said nothing. He simply listened, smiling softly, and began to pour the tea. The cup filled, then it overflowed. Tea spilled onto the table, dripping to the floor. Still the master poured. "Stop," the professor cried. "The cup is full. No more can go in." The master paused. Then he looked at the professor and said quietly, "Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and ideas. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" The room fell silent. Something shifted. In that moment, the professor understood. His knowledge had become a wall, not a path. Zen isn't something to be added. It is what remains when we put everything else down. The Buddha said, "In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. To learn, we must forget. To receive, we must open. To understand, we must let go of needing to understand." The professor bowed deeply. For the first time, he stopped explaining and began listening, not just with his mind, but with his whole being. The farmer's maybe. The maybe mindset keeps the heart steady amid uncertainty. There was once an old farmer who lived in a small village. He had very little, a modest house, a small plot of land, and one horse to help him work the fields. One day, the horse ran away. The neighbors came to console him. "What bad luck," they said. "How will you plow the land now?" The farmer shrugged gently and said, "Maybe." A week later, the horse returned, bringing with it 2 wild horses from the hills. The neighbors rejoiced. "What wonderful fortune," they exclaimed. "Now you're richer than before." Again, the farmer said, "Maybe." Soon after, the farmer's only son tried to ride one of the wild horses. He was thrown off and broke his leg badly. The neighbors came again, shaking their heads. "What a tragedy," they said. "Your son is crippled now." The farmer replied, "Maybe." Weeks passed and war broke out in the land. Soldiers came to the village, taking all the young men for battle, but they left the farmer's son behind. His injury spared him. The neighbors wept. Their sons were gone. "You are so lucky," they said. "Your son is safe." The farmer looked at them kindly and said once more, "Maybe." The Buddha taught, events themselves are neither good nor bad. It is the mind that makes them so. Life flows like a river, sometimes calm, sometimes wild. We do not always know where it leads, but wisdom lives not in labeling, not in controlling, but in staying open. When we stop chasing the good and fearing the bad, we begin to discover a deeper peace, not built on what happens, but on how we meet it. And sometimes, the wisest thing we can say is simply, maybe. These stories may have seemed simple. A master archer, a man laughing under a tree, a stone in the road, a cup too full, a farmer who said only maybe. But in each of them was a door. Not to some distant truth, but to the truth that has always lived quietly, right where you are. Perhaps what they've offered isn't a lesson to remember, but a softness to return to pause before judging, to laugh at the seriousness of ego, to see obstacles from a different angle, to let go of what you think you know, to meet life as it comes, without grasping for answers. The Buddha never promised we'd control the waves, only that we could learn how to sit still in the boat. And sometimes, That stillness begins with nothing more than a deep breath and the willingness to say, maybe this too is part of the way. Thank you for listening.